Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and today I would like to share my final thoughts on the Civivi knives Badlands Vagabond. I know, weird ass name, really does sound like they're running out of stuff to call their knives, but regardless, this specific variant of the Badlands Vagabond is a Knife Center exclusive. And Knife Center is slowly becoming one of my favorite online retailers because they put out a lot of really cool colorway exclusives. This is actually still available, and I've had it for, I believe, over 2 weeks now. I was supposed to make this review last week, but I got caught up with other stuff. So it is still available at the recording of this video, and it is $79.50. And this is a little bit higher than some other Civivis that look kind of like this, but what makes it so special is the blade material. It is CPM S35VN, which is wonderful premium blade material. It is great to sharpen. It's just great all around, in my opinion. I personally like to keep it at around a 600 grit and polished up to 0.5 microns or whatever polishing that or strop that you have. That would do just fine, but between 5 and 600 grit for sure, that's the sweet spot for this knife. Let's get into a couple little specs. I'm going to be pulling this stuff off of Knife Center. Their specs seem to be relatively accurate. So let's see here. The blade length is 3.25 inches. Closed length is 4.23 inches. Overall length is 7.48 inches. Blade material S35VN. Let's see. It's a hollow grind for sure. I mean, look at that. That is most definitely a hollow grind. See how the light curves that way? That is the easiest way on a satin finished blade. That is the easiest way that you can tell if a knife is hollow or flat ground. So all that is just aids in the cutting performance. That's it really. The handle material is white FRN. So what's so great about FRN is that it's basically an impact resistant plastic. It's super lightweight. It's extremely clean and easy to mill. This does have these little micro milled patterns here. You can hear that. It sounds rougher than it actually is, and it actually feels very nicely rounded off, and it feels very soft, but adds just enough grip for sure. And it has this like faux bolster kind of look. It's all non-textured up here at the top, and that's really about it. Yeah, manufactured, made in China. No big surprise there, coming from Civivi. Now, I'm sure by this time you guys already know that Civivi is now the middle ground for a large company that produces knives. So you have We Knives at the top, then you have Civivi, and now there's Sencut. So the main difference is really just in the materials that they use, but what really does end up blurring the lines is when there are dealer and retailer exclusives that bring out different handle material, mainly different blade material, because that's what a lot of people really are willing to spend their money on. The base model of this was in just like some like junky steel, but it was like 40 bucks. And I liked how it looked. I just never got it because personally I didn't really care to spend the money on a knife that has that kind of steel. But when I saw that this was available in S35VN, a blade material that I am well seasoned in sharpening and using and maintaining, it was just a no-brainer purchase for me. So at the price point that it's coming at, I think it's extremely well worth it. I'm just gonna tell you guys now, it is a highly recommendable knife for sure. I don't have any, I have two Civivis in my collection. One I have as a size comparison knife, that's my Elementum. And then I have my Civivi Backlash, but I don't really use that as a size comparison knife because it just wasn't really that popular of a model. But what's so great about Civivi is that these are how knives are supposed to be built at this price point, in my opinion. And now there are actually other brands that are doing things a little bit better than Civivi. So if you're new to the knife world and you see this little logo here, you know you're holding something that is at a great value. And value, in my opinion, is all what Civivi's about. They're not so much about like crazy designs and you know, weird aesthetics and gimmicky crap. They do a lot of very straightforward, simple designs, textbook designs, honestly. But they just do it so well, and how they deliver, it's great. You get a nice little pouch, some stickers, a cloth, and at some points that's more than what you would get in other knives, like other knife companies like Kershaw, Gerber, Buck, you know, all these other I would call them like joke companies at this point, because they would not be able to make something like this and bring it at the price that it is. If Kershaw were to make something like this at the same quality, fit, and finish and tolerances, it'd probably cost maybe like 30 bucks more, just being honest. Gerber, they probably couldn't even make something like this even if they wanted to. They do have, Gerber does have some newer stuff coming out, and it seems like they're, you know, finally getting their shit together for as long as they've been around. Gerber was a thing well before I was even born, and Civivi is a company that literally started within like the last like 5-6 years or so, and they just blew a crap ton of people out of the water. So besides that little rant, let's go into a couple of size comparison knives. So here I have my Spyderco PM2. I have the Spyderco Para 3. So as you can see, it's definitely closer to the size of the Para 3. It is a medium to large size knife for sure, but the same handle length as the Para 3, but actually a whole lot more cutting edge, which is typically a very common thing when comparing knives to the Para 3. Let's do some Benchmades. Here is the Osborne 940. 940 has a little bit more handle and just a little bit more cutting edge, but it's honestly pretty darn close. I have a bug out right here, and the Badlands Vagabond is pretty darn close, if not exactly the same in handle, and the cutting edge is pretty darn close. Maybe the Badlands Vagabond actually has just a tiny bit more blade length there. And in comparison, when it comes to cutting between these two, I would say that the hollow grind of this Civivi is going to outperform this Benchmade bug out here, regardless of how thin it is, because this thing is just ridiculously thin behind the edge. Last two, my Civivi Elementum, all dressed up and everything. It's definitely larger than that, both a little bit in handle and significantly more in blade. Last but not least, I have my Demco 80 20.5 textured tie. So yeah, the Demco is larger in handle and shorter in blade. So that's a little weird, but there you go. So there's some very common knives that are loved within the hobby that would be nice visual comparison knives. So let's get right into this, I guess, if we weren't already. So what I love so much about this knife is that it is manufactured by a wonderful company that knows what they're doing. They make safe textbook designs, and this is nothing short of that, really. I did take this apart and clean it, sharpen it right before this recording. And one thing I noticed that was actually worth noting was the weight relief within the steel liners. It's kind of hard to see in there, but there is a butt ton of weight relief. I don't know if maybe Civivi's just been doing that with some of their newer stuff, but a lot of the Civivis that I had before, and I mean, I had a bunch of other Civivis before, but I've gifted them away to family members because they're such great knives to gift. Their weight relieving really wasn't that impressive, but this was actually noticeably impressive. The liners were very well finished. Everything was well rounded off. And if I had a flashlight, I'd actually be able to like hold it to the scales and show you just how thin these FRN scales are. Actually, you know what? Let's do thickness up against the Para 3. It looks quite the same. Actually, it feels quite the same. So it's not that thick of a knife, really. But in different dimensions, it'll be definitely better to carry than the Para 3. And you get more handle. You still get that finger choil, which is nice in comparison to that Para 3. And almost half the price of that Para 3, with some variants of different blade materials that the Para 3 is offered in. They're like almost $200 knives or past that. I know the Maximate one is definitely a 200 and up, and then other ones just go up from there. But like a base Para 3 is still it's like $160 still. So a knife that's well worth it if you're looking for a Spyderco. But I will say that I believe you get a little bit more in comparison to this Civivi right here. So more blade length, you get that great finger choil. This is significantly lighter than the Para 3, that's for sure. And it's just as structurally sound, in my opinion, as the steel liners. While they are skeletonized, they're structurally sound. They are. So you're not going to be using this to bust open doors and chop down trees, but this will definitely pass with flying colors to do basic EDC tasks, any little tasks in the kitchen or outside in the garden. I personally love cooking and also doing outdoorsy work with my plants and whatever, and I've used this for that. Now you would think that the white FRN scales would get dirty, and they do. They get dirty extremely easily. But they're super easy to clean. I literally just use some glasses cleaner and then the microfiber cloth that came with it, and it looks pretty darn close to brand new. Now I do plan to dye this teal because that is my favorite color, but that's for a project later on down the road. I'm going to be using it just as is until it gets nice and dirty, and then I'll go and throw it in some boiling water with some Dawn dish soap, and they'll help to get a lot of stuff out. And that's one of the main prepping steps to dyeing scales, whether it's G10, FRN. You can dye micarta too, it's nice. A lot of the colors are inconsistent between the types of handle materials, but it's like the more affordable version of anodizing. If you don't have a power supply, you can just get a knife that has FRN, G10, or micarta scales. Richlight too. I think you could dye Richlight too. Yeah, you can DIY all this kind of crazy stuff. It's fun, definitely. So T8 pivot, it does have Civivi's little captured notch that is built into the scale itself. So that's great when assembling, disassembling this knife. It does have this little recessed spot right here. It's not super deep, but it's just enough to help the deep carry pocket clip sit in there nicely. It's not super flat, but at least the screws are flat, which is nice. There are 2 T6 screws for the clip, but everything else is T8, so it's pretty standard all across the board with a lot of Civivis. I'm waiting for the day that they have an all T8 Civivi. that would be great. I think there is one or two. I'm probably wrong about that, but I think there's one. Just to be on the safe side, I'll say that there's one. Because I haven't handled all the models, of course, I wouldn't know. It does have a tiny little lanyard post. It's out of the way of, you know, being able to appreciate the shape and the silhouette of this knife. It's very simple, and I'm thankful that they didn't put a giant freaking hole right there. Still accommodating to people who use lanyards. I personally don't, but if that's something that you like doing, hey, at least you're able to throw a very thin little lanyard on there with a little decorative knot or bead. It does have this matchy FRN backspacer, and yeah, that's really it. Complaints about this? I wish that really wish that the blade wasn't silver. I wish it was actually stone washed. I think that would have been pretty cool. Or, you know, blackened. That would be nice. Only just to bring this whole aesthetic of black and white together. It just kind of feels like they just went with it. It was like, oh yeah, we're gonna do all black and white everything. Oh shit, we forgot about the blade. I'll send it out anyway, it's fine. That's kind of how this feels like when I look at this. Now, while blackening the blade and stone washing is something that could be very done at home, it still would have been nice to have it come from the factory like that, because they do an amazing black wash. They do an amazing stone wash. There are some other Civivis that I have owned, like all the 3 button locks that I owned from Civivi, they all had black blades and they looked great. I don't see why they couldn't have done that on this. So besides that, this is literally a perfect knife. Just another perfect textbook safe design from Civivi. The pocket clip, while it does stick up just a little bit, it's tolerable. I'm pretty sure with some finessing you might be able to get a black titanium pocket clip that is that you can pick up off Amazon. They're like, I don't know, $12 or $13 at this point. I think their price might have gone up a little bit because of their popularity, and I think they might even throw in different lengths of screws, so you can try playing around with that. I personally am fine with just leaving the bent steel clip on this, and that's really it. So it's a wonderful little knife. I love the idea of flipper and thumbs up deployment. They're like my 2 favorite, but when they're together they're even better, and especially when they're done right. So I believe the detent is very well tuned for, you know, push button. You can put a lot of pressure behind that, or light switch, which is going to be the best light switch for sure. Safety, can't really touch that. Like, you can't dig your nail in there or feel the blade. The tip, you can't pick it out of there, which is nice. And I only do that on some reviews, because some it's like, obviously you can't feel it, you can't touch the blade, but some knife designs I try to make it a point to bring that up. If you can contact the blade or pick out the tip of the blade on some designs, they're typically like skinnier, where it looks like they're fitting a lot of blade into the same size handle or a smaller handle, and that's something that I try to look at. So I mean, as I mentioned before, these are tools with enthusiast elements sprinkled all over the place, and you know, safety is still something that should be considered, and I don't really see too many other reviewers talk about safety really, but I mean, this really is a safe, wonderful design. It really is. This is a knife that I would confidently gift to somebody else. And actually, another model from Civivi's line that I actually have gifted and wish I kept for myself was the Civivi Brazen. It is practically the same thing. It has same deployment, and it feels the same actually. The brazen was just a hair bit more hand filling, and the blade was just like a classic drop point flat ground. I believe it was a flat ground blade. I would purchase one for myself if there was a S35VN variant. I think they did an S35VN, but it was a Tanto, and I think Tantos are gross as hell. It's just not my thing, and I don't think that I don't think they make the sharpening process any easier, that's for sure. So, but with that, all that being said, hope you enjoyed this review. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will be linking this down in the description. As I mentioned before, it is still available, so go and grab one. The holidays are right around the corner, and I think that this would be a wonderful knife to customize for somebody. You know, just imagine, you know, you asked your uncle or your aunt even, because, you know, flipper tabs are very easy for women to get at for sure. If you ask them, what's your favorite color? And they're like, oh, I want blue. And this knife, well, it's not offered in blue. It is on the cheaper version, but you want to give them a blade material that's actually worth putting in your pocket. You know, blacken and wash the blade and dye the scales blue, and this would be freaking awesome. I am planning to blacken and wash the blade and do teal scales. I think that pop and color will be a pretty fun, relatively expensive build. So just think about that. Grab them while they're still available, because honestly, I don't think they're going to be available for too long. That's really it. Thank you guys for watching, and have a wonderful day.